Hello and welcome to Badger Talks Live, which brings exciting happenings, resources, and talent from your UW flagship campus to the people of Wisconsin and beyond. I'm Amelia Moser from Manawa, Wisconsin. I'm a graduate of the class of 2023, graduating with a Bachelor's of Science in Biochemistry with certificates in Game Design and Folklore. I'm pleased to introduce Sarah Gagnon, Creative Director at Field Day Lab. Sarah leads a team at Field Day in the Wisconsin Center for Education Research to make a game called Headlines and Highwater, which I helped design and develop as an undergrad intern. This game explores the professional practices of journalism with the hope that kids who learn how journalists operate would learn better media literacy skills. This tool can help teachers teach kids about what mediates real news, these professional practices, instead of just identifying fake news. The game also addresses how journalists work to build trust within their communities. Sarah Gagnon is an artist, game designer, writer, educator, and fierce advocate for kids. Sarah leads the game design studio arm of Field Day Lab, where they study learning at UW-Madison's Center for Education Research. Her vision is to make games that bridge the work of cutting-edge researchers to the public. Her intellectual interests in media studies and the psychoanalytic tradition is the foundation of her thinking and about learning games and their role in society. Please welcome Sarah Gagnon.
Thank you. Hi. I am so glad to be able to be here. I'm excited to talk about my work at Field Day Lab and this game that we designed this year, Headlines and Highwater. I'm a designer, educator, and artist, and I work at Field Day Lab, which is at the UW-Madison. I'm from Madison, and I work at a research education center called the Wisconsin Center for Education Research. It's the largest in the world, and our lab is part research team and part studio because we work to understand how learning games can help people study how people learn. So we use like games as instruments. So why games? I'm thoughtful and I'm nervous, just like any other parent and educator when it comes to the complicated space of kids on screens. But over the last couple of years, as I've been thinking about this, I take my inspiration from Mr. Rogers and our artists at Sesame Street and others at like the Great Public Broadcasting for kids who knew that kids are on TV. And this is where kids are. And they wanted to go there and make the best quality educational TV that would consider the whole child and every child. So for me, when I came into working on educational game design, I really wanted to have that vibe. I think, well, kids are playing games, so that's where I want to be. I want to be there making games that are the best for kids. So in 2023, this year in May, we released a game called Headlines and Highwater. It's an educational game based on teaching kids about the news. So I had this idea for this game in maybe 2018, 2019. And the idea was really to teach a game about fake news. The trends were kind of going really high about like thinking about this as being talked about. And I saw a bunch of games where kids were kind of playing, they were really intended to teach games to identify like the fake news. And I kept thinking about this and when it comes to like looking at money, it's like I remember as a kid learning the way that you determine if money was fake or real was to study the real money. And I kept thinking like, well, what about a game that really looked at what real money is? News takes place fast. You're always able to find like a little problem in it because news is this like rapid cycle, and that doesn't necessarily make it fake. News is mediated through these professional practices of this whole journalistic field that's constantly working to develop better standards and practices for how knowledge is created. And it's also like this really essential part of our democracy. So as I kind of started thinking about this, I started thinking like, how is journalistic knowledge created? Like, how is this made? I'm just like an artist, a designer, and I hadn't really thought about this much. But I did really like the idea of designing games where the player could take on the role of of a journalist and kind of act like a journalist. So, and years ago when I helped start Field Day Lab, which is like half game studio, half research lab, I knew that we needed these games to be played by a lot of kids in order for the research to go well. And so we have this opportunity and this need to make them really beautiful and really get played by a lot of kids. And I had this vision that these games would be more than just research instruments. They would work as a bridge between the incredible work happening by researchers here at the UW, the University of Wisconsin, in the public. So it was like this image of this bridge. And I wanted that to be the case with this game as well. And this was an idea that I had, and I kind of came across in some of my reading. I kept hearing this name, Sue Robinson, who is a professor, and she works at here at the UW-Madison in the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. We had coffee together, and I just loved her immediately. We immediately connected. She was a journalist for many years before she came here to teach. And she agreed to be my partner on this project, because at Field Day, we always partner with a subject expert. And so we wrote a grant for the Wisconsin Idea called Baldwin, the Baldwin Grant. And we won this award that gave us the money to work on this game. To make this game, we partnered with a half a dozen journalists and I think about a dozen teachers from around the state of Wisconsin. This is like up north, down south, east, west, all the corners. So we had just a ton of like journalism teachers, but also like media studies and some science teachers, and then journalists from around the state. So this is the game we made. You play as a girl named Elle Benjamin. She's a big city gal who has moved to small town Wisconsin. This small town is hyper obsessed with cherry festivals and their community. And when I was talking to Sue, one of the things she was really interested in her research, Sue Robinson, is the area of trust. So how do people develop trust who are journalists within their communities? And so we wanted this kind of like these two different cultures kind of coming together and figuring that out. So when we decided on a type of game, which is called a text-based adventure, which is where you read different texts and then you make choices. So here's our main character. Her name is Elle Benjamin. She has not unpacked yet. She's just waiting for a bigger and better job. And, I was really inspired by the show, The Gilmore Girls, where there's all these jokes all the time about like small town life. And this kind of perspective of like, I don't know, just kind of making fun of it a little bit, but like in a really like endearing and loving way. And in a lot of ways, like in the game, we make a lot of jokes at the expense of like this big city person coming in. As an artist, like it was my dream to work with other artists as an artist educator. And I just loved our art team at Field Day. They did such a great job. I love like the lighting on this. And we do these games really inexpensively. So like just these little moments of like flickers of light and drips, that was a lot of the fun for me. The artist is named Ben Nadler. He's a comic artist who does like books, graphic novels, and some things like that. So check him out if you're interested in his work. But in this game, the player character has to make a series of choices. So that's kind of the game style, is that you have an action. It's kind of like an old school, like a choose your own adventure, only it's like digital. And for each one of these choices that you make, you have an opportunity to gain certain skills. So these skills are resourcefulness, endurance, tech, social, trust, and research. Now, these skills we came up with these skills based on multiple interviews with the journalists. So these half dozen journalists, we like interviewed them and talked about like what you needed. So it's not just like research and social skills, but they were like, oh yeah, like you have to know how to use tech. You have to know how to like keep things charged or solve different tech problems. Or you have to, so the endurance one was really interesting because every journalist that has play tested this for me or played it when we were doing press with this game loved that we included like the choice to like get a snack or do something else, because they're like, oh yeah, you really end up on the job without any chance to stop. And so that was like a super fun thing to get that kind of feedback, but also realize like these are the kinds of choices that that we wanted the player to realize that journalists are faced with. At the end of every level, there's 6 levels in this game, where you're kind of taking on the role of a journalist. You have collected a bunch of photos, a bunch of like facts from your research, and then interviews and quotes. So then you kind of select those and build your story based on that, and based on how you used your time and how you some of the choices you made, you have like a so good enough story or a not good enough one to move forward. So you get feedback from your editor. And then, and then you kind of find out how you do. So there's 6 stories, and you get to play as this journalist who can never make a perfect story, because that's not what journalism is about, but they can make a good enough story. So yeah, this game, it launched in May of 2023. So far, it's had 20,000 sessions and 16,000 players. So some of those players have gone back and like played it more. You can see like based on, this is like a little graph that shows like how often this is played. So you can definitely see like it launched full on into the world in May, and it definitely gets played during the week. So those big dips are the weekends. And then over the summer, it doesn't get played. So we see that the majority of people playing this game are in schools, which is how we designed it, what we wanted it for. So it's very exciting to us that around the country, this immediately got picked up and is being played a lot. So in the lifetime of this game, it'll probably get played, I don't know, it could be about 1 million times. So this game will have a lifetime of about 10 years is what we expect of our games. So this was very exciting as part of the Baldwin, which is its intention is to be able to like really impact communities around Wisconsin, and to be able to teach kids earlier. So today, like, kids are they have access to the news earlier than ever before. And yet a lot of the stuff with journalism that they are getting like in classes, media stuff, there's not like as much intervention early. So we are really excited that this is like intended for middle school, and that they'll get these kind of interventions earlier. And hopefully like they'll like it. It'll be fun. It'll be like an engaging thing. And some of the feedback that we've heard from the kids is like, this really isn't fair. Journalists should have more resources. And it's really hard to do this. And, oh, you have to do more research, or you really have to be prepared. And so those are the kinds of things that I was so excited moving into this. Moving into this design, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I feel really proud to be able to work at the UW-Madison and with Field Day. So I really want to make games that are beautiful and freely accessible to kids. These are free. It can be played on a browser. And yeah, help the university kind of researchers doing such good work get their message out to the communities. So that concludes my presentation, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for watching this Badger Talks live event produced by the University of Wisconsin-Madison through UW Connect's outreach and the Office of State Relations. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube to see the library of past recorded talks. Please visit badgertalks.wisc.edu to see the schedule of upcoming talks, sign up for the Badger Talks email list, and search the roster of over 400 UW experts who are available to give talks on important issues in your Wisconsin community.